Hello, today I would like to talk about women's rights and gender discrimination that is still happening in Uzbekistan. And before I could move on to my strategies, first I would like to make an overview of the issue. Women's rights discrimination has always been neglected in a post-Soviet developing country like Uzbekistan, and after prodigious efforts invested into this problem, the government finally decides to introduce a new law which guarantees equal rights for both men and women. Despite such attention driven towards this issue, conservative social customs still remain highly prejudiced towards female and thus fail to protect their rights as promised. Over the years, women's role in society has shifted dramatically in many parts of the world where feminist groups were first introduced. Despite such growing popularity of activist movements, less well-off regions in Central Asia continue to develop an archaic representation of the gender role delegation within the society, driven by the prevailing cultural norms. Particularly in a post-Soviet country like Uzbekistan, women were always subjected to oppression and scapegoating, while the men felt more privileged and entitled to make decisions without fear of being judged. The toxic narrative, which always underestimated women's role in society, was established long before Uzbekistan declared its independence. The Soviet Union era was first to dictate and delegate the socio-economic roles in such a manner that women were regarded as housewives and men were mostly responsible for the financial support and decision-making process within the family. It is truly hard to think that even today, the modern Uzbek society hasn't changed much in societal structure, which makes one think they still dwell in the past. However, from political point of view, Uzbekistan eventually managed to adopt a law in 2018 promoting equal rights and opportunities for all genders. However, because of the cultural, social, and religious pressure, women are still being viewed through the telescope of mistreatment and judgment. Despite Uzbek government's vigorous actions and laws to eliminate women discrimination, there is still social bias prejudice towards women in the society. Having said that, the Uzbek society does not support any reforms in favor of gender equality, protecting women's rights, and as a result, women still continue to feel the pressure and the burden of misogyny caused by the religious, male-dominated community. First, it is important to look at what women's affliction was caused by, as well as to detect the roots of the main problem. Before, the whole territory was colonized by USSR, Uzbekistan and some other countries were home for various settlers from Middle East, who afterwards introduced Islam to Uzbek people. According to Constitution of the Republic of Uzbekistan, after declaring independence in 1991, Uzbekistan has defined itself as a secular country where the representatives of different religions and nationalities live. Despite some measured transformations associated with becoming an independent country with its own language, culture, and legislation system, there are still some spheres of social life that remain unaffected. Having said that, Uzbek women are still the ones who are restricted from the certain activities such as earning money, being independent, or choosing a career. This means that the Uzbek culture restricts women to housewives and stay-at-home moms only. And as a result, women are not allowed by their husband to participate in politics, to pursue their dreams, and take part in different social events. And mostly because of the old-fashioned sexist narrative that women are less capable than men. Unfortunately, in many cases, when women try to protest against discrimination and become brave enough to speak up, society in turn does not show the right amount of support and help, and as a result, women just fail. In fact, such protests gave rise to another social issue called domestic violence. Despite the high incidence of domestic violence in the Republic of Uzbekistan, the government failed to acknowledge the problem and to take the adequate steps to address it. In fact, some of the governmental actions have made the situation for battered women even more difficult. While Uzbek law punishes criminal assault, no legal provisions specifically subscribe for domestic violence, and many legal justice officers do not take the problem seriously. And when they do acknowledge it, government officials consider domestic violence to be a problem solved by the family or community. Police often discourages women from making complaints against their abusive husbands, and abusers are rarely taken from home or jailed. The overwhelming response of the legal system and indeed the entire society to the domestic violence is to urge women to reconcile with their abusers. Although law enforcement officials acknowledge that women turn to divorce to escape from the violence, yet the divorce procedures fail to address this issue, and divorce is actively discouraged in the society. Therefore, to address this issue, I would like to propose three main strategic solutions. First of all, government needs to provide sufficient and immediate amount of funding for non-governmental organizations. These organizations can conduct anti-discrimination workshops, trainings, conferences in different public venues in order to educate local population on the importance of equal rights opportunities for all genders, and especially to emphasize the role of the woman in the society. Such educational activities arranged by NGOs should be available to everyone, especially for the elderly population, for them to see how conservative cultural norms could be actually more harmful. Secondly, the government could also incorporate new subjects or extracurricular activities called gender studies at schools and universities. These particular actions would inspire female teachers to educate youngsters on sensitive topics like feminism and discrimination, as well as infuse them with a respectful attitude towards women. Subsequently, the male students will learn to value women intrinsically and be aware of the social problems women are facing nowadays. This national department can serve as a strong power to influence the decisions of the current president to allocate more seats for females in parliament. To sum it up, I truly believe that sooner or later my country would become more open towards feminism, and by implementing those strategies, women can feel safe and happy. Thank you for watching.